What I want to share is something I've written down. This is like 15 years ago about Myokonin. And I thought something about this. I just started to read and I thought I want to translate as I read. So let's see if I can find it. So this is the Fuji is the woman who left some kind of a document about her religious experience. So she says the first religious experience is something that cannot happen just continuing to what you have been thinking about or she has been thinking about. What it means is that the way of our thinking, which tend to be dualistic, has to die at that moment. So you have to go beyond the ego corresponding to that. Which means is that this dualistic way of looking at it has to go beyond that person thinking like that. But since this never been challenged, you cannot do by yourself. So at the time, her power within that she's got was at the peak. So if something happens, that has to be coming outside of her space or ego. And with that power, as if riding with it, to pass beyond ego. That's what needs to happen. So be more specific about it. It is like this, that our thinking has to go back to the root by sort of killing yourself to become truly yourself. So, which means it is to find the foundation where the self is standing. That's where it should go back to. So there's a connection to the foundation. So self then is to die itself and then go internally to what makes the self to be alive and then rebirth that self. And that's what it is. And after having that one, this dualistic thinking can become alive. What a wonderful sentence. So such is the realization of Fuji. She realized all of a sudden there is herself and there's something else. Let's call it God or the Buddha. Though there's a difference in between that was happening. Then, by being at the state in the middle of everything that is crazy or regretful, then there's a realization of me with that sad state, and there's something or someone watching that self. So there are two of those. One is suffering, the other one is observing. So that's the realization. And she's saying, I guess, again, feeling sorry about the self. And then there is some dependence on the God or the Buddha. Was it the self before? But at the same time, there's additional entity, call it another self, looking at the situation, which is the self before the self previously operating. So something found as a new awareness looking at the situation. And in that new self, so to speak, caused her to realize two entity of selves. One is the traditional, original, or the ones that she was living with, and then there's another one to watch that self. So that's the discussion I often talk about, the mind and heart. So mind has a limitation, heart has to kind of not breaking in, but to be realized that mind has a, what's the word? Confinement, just being within. Something to look at that confinement, the self or ego. That's what she's talking about. And that realization was the leap from the previous tendency she had about her way of thinking, which is the dualistic, just the typical thinking with the constraint she was living with. But the jump came from, this is the word, other power, Tariki, in the Shin Buddhism's terminology, because it's not her own self, but the other self that caused that to happen, the jump to look at herself. So it is that realization of what we may call God or Buddha. In Japanese, Shinbutsu means God and Buddha together. But that's Japanese way of saying, it's just kind of generalizing and not making it more difficult, but there's new entity, new powerful source that made her to realize that observe this craziness to get out. And then Fuji realized that at the moment, the Buddha and myself was originally just one. And that sense of connection, which is like observed and observed, is one kind of a story that if I use the Krishnamurti's case and many other things I talked about, I can talk more and more about it, but we don't have to go there, because she had that sense of the oneness of her small self and the big self, God, Buddha, observing, made that jump. And that realization made her feel very comfortable. Well, that's the reason why I say, be at your eternal home. So I'm reading this like 15 years ago. I wrote this. Was about the Fuji. Anyway, and then just a few more. 3 months later, there was similar experience like that, and then clearly she felt that there's Amida 4 on one end, and the other end is the one, the small, the ego, that cannot do anything. So those two entity, it's not a good idea to use the word entity, but at least you know that there's a difference of the one being small mind and the other one is heart, or the Buddha's vote to help. So that's the realization. She had it clearly. And then leaving the one that is confined, that cannot do anything within the space of the mind, then immediately there's that is transcending that self. And that is saving her. Realize that she's having peace. In other words, there's that paradox of ego, but leaving that as it is, because the mind still, we have it, she felt comfortable. So she had two dimensions. As I say, it's mind and heart. And if you are just only living in the mind, nothing more. But if you listen to the heart, in this case, God and Buddha, observing, that's her expression. And when you realize there's more than what the self is pointing, and she had the knowledge, I guess, of Amida Buddhas to help, and there's a moment that when that self cannot do anything, he found a way to jump off that other power, compassion of the other power, clean up all the worries, and she felt at peace. So that realization made her to feel anshin, peaceful, and have the happiness. And at the same time, she felt there's something that she cannot just sit, just be like that. She wanted to do something. And from that point of her experience, as if to find the root of life, like I often talk about, core of our being is my word, but the same thing, root of the life. So she felt that experience. And from that time on, Fuji-san's, this is Lady Fuji's behavior, and all the behavior, become everything so alive. Well, this may be a little different from me. I'm still not as alive. Well, maybe in a way, but, and anyway, move on. This says that anything she says and does has that kibi-kibi している aliveness, energy into it. And that happiness and the peaceful sense, as well as the liveliness of what she felt from that experience, showed up on her face. The color, meaning the smile. And she said the following. Oh, this is from the Daisetz's book, page 249 to 252, called Myokonin. Oh, no wonder. And I'm just excerpt of that book is in my homepage, again 15 years ago or so. So anyway, and then last piece is that after her life changed with the happiness and peace and aliveness and showing up on her, behavior and so forth, said these things. Number one, I just come out as I am, which conventionally is not anything nice. But let me be like that. Because she's so comfortable and peaceful and now have this connection to the Amida Buddha or the God. So that solved all the problem, and the worry related to the society's convention and so forth is gone. So it doesn't matter how she may be seen as, because she just can't stand it. It's just a little kid running around that I got this empowered sense. Second point, Bosatsu, the work of Bosatsu, meaning the Amida Buddha, is where I am today at this point. So you can call it God and Buddha is working in this instance right here. Number 3, I know I cannot be saved by myself. So even that's the case, I'm so happy for what I found by being saved. Number 4, in this cup of tea has 3,000 universe or the worlds in it. How she came to that, I guess my point, if I interpret this, is that everything, not just the tea, has the element of the work of God, Buddha, everywhere, observing. Don't be confined in your mind or something. She didn't say it, but that's how I interpret. Number 5, when you have white and there's another white, it's very difficult to distinguish. So how do you distinguish white and white? That's what he says. And I have to think why she's saying like that. Yes, probably something like, I'm here with the same mind, but I'm here with the same mind, but I'm relieved. I'm transcended. I'm enlightened, is what she's saying without using such a word. But that's her real world. That's why it's very interesting. And the 6th one, each stones, pebbles, and so forth, each leaf, grass leaves, and so forth, that there is that compassion. I think what she's saying is everything is the manifestation of the laws of the universe. That's my word, but her view is by the other power. And that's totally right. You don't think like that, but when you're realizing something is doing behind, you may not realize, but make you alive and become much more excited about it. So there is that compassion she felt. Before, she didn't know anything about it. Now, she is so empowered, lively, appreciative, not just her own, but it's everywhere. I call it the laws of nature. It's everywhere. And I said always it's the miracle. And that's my version, but her version seemed to be quite to that point. And the last sentence, and this is the end of it, is that Shin no ichinen tokorata, any state of mind with that belief that there is such thing to make a white and white, or me and the God and Buddha, to help to expand your world, that you are taken care of because of the compassion of the God Buddha or Amida Buddha. When you have that one, with that, what you can say cannot be described as there is or there is not, because it is as it is. So that's why I say it's at the absolute state of being. Non-duality, if you want to call that. But that's too conceptual. I don't want to use that word so much, but it's, of course, it makes sense. So that's the last piece. And that's what I found out of those, I don't know how many pages, 3 pages from the book from Daisetz. I didn't know it. I just felt like there's something in here and I just wanted to just say it. I didn't read it beforehand because it's too much to, I can just share it. So anyway, in the evening, I am quiet usually, and then check some of the world affair, what's going on, and then also spend time some of the YouTube. And today I was thinking about Myokonin and Namuamidabutsu because let me just finish. It's already 21 minutes, but let me finish it with this one because how can I finish it? Zen is a little bit intellectual and Shin Buddhism is more by emotion. And this is lady without much intellect-oriented way of living life. Ordinary people. But they've got the heart. But they have the same structure that we want to go beyond the confinement of the mind. And that's the experience of what she found. Ordinary person. That's why I like it, because that's about the empowerment. I'm from Zen, but I can relate to Shin Buddhism, Namuamidabutsu, saving by the other power. Because the other power is everywhere. That made us to be alive. There's a creativity behind it. So there's a wisdom behind it. But along with wisdom is a compassion that we can communicate each other and share and go beyond the confinement of the mind together. That's the spirit. So Zen tend to be a little bit more isolated, but the Shin Buddhism has this community sense, sharing sense, and that's profound. So I have a good night's sleep. Impressive. I'm so happy to read this one. Thank you. Good night.